Make sense of all these developments. It's a pleasure to welcome to studio Lieutenant Colonel in the Reserves, Jonathan Conricus, former international spokesman in the IDF and a senior fellow at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Jonathan, thank you so much for being here. It does feel like something major is imminent. Your sense, all options are on the table still for Donald Trump. We know the talks continue as we speak inside Geneva. What do you make of this moment for the region?
I think the Iranian people is waiting for help to arrive. Help appears to be close. Help appears to be in position to actually be meaningful. And I think help has amassed enough firepower to actually be helpful against this oppressive and brutal regime. And as my colleague from FTD, Andrea, just pointed out, I think we are beyond the point of really negotiating with the Iranians. I understand that the American administration wants to go through the motions. There are strong political forces in the US who want diplomacy to actually be the real effort here. But at the end of the day, when you look at what the Iranians are doing and what they're saying, they are not going to demilitarize their nuclear weapons program. They're not going to stop to enrich. They want to have the breakout capabilities. They're going to continue to build missiles with money that they don't have. They're going to continue to pay terror organizations like Hezbollah and others with money at the behest of the Iranian people. And the only way to stop it is by actually making the Iranian regime pay. And I think at this time, when everything's said and done, it is a historic opportunity for the Middle East, for the US president to have a very meaningful legacy and really to change the trajectory. And I would say that most things are now in place for that decision to be made. Regarding what you covered before about Israel going first, I do not see the logic in that, because that would be Israel dragging the US into war. I'm sure Israel could, and I'm sure Israel would be happy to strike the Iranian regime and get rid of most of its missiles and other capabilities. But at the end of the day, this has to be a US-led operation when everything else has been said and done, led by the American president with strong political support after diplomacy has been exhausted, but then going after this horrible regime and possibly changing the trajectory of the Middle East.
When you look at these aircraft strike carriers and the jets that are also in the region right now, and you see the extent and the scope of the firepower that exists, from a strategic point of view, is this just a pressure point? Or surely if all this firepower is being brought to the Middle East, it's not just about pressure on the talks, it's also more than just a flex, your sense?
Yeah, I think, and a good example are the F-22s, because they are a rare asset in the US military capabilities. They're excellent for basically creating a corridor for other attack aircraft to actually drop bombs. What they usually do is electronic warfare, and they strike radar systems and air defense systems. The US doesn't have hundreds of these planes, and they have put, according to the Chinese report, quite a sizable amount of those in Israel for the first time, not as an exercise. That in itself, I think, is indicative of what the US is planning. US now has intel, logistics, electronics, strike, aircraft, all in theater already, with lots of supplies, with lots of capabilities to sustain operations. Of course, the Iranians should see it as a flex, and if they were wise, they would come to the table and say, okay, we will sign whatever you want, because they understand that there is tremendous firepower really ready on the other side of the Hormuz Strait. I'm not sure that their pride and arrogance will allow them to do so.
Which brings me to my next question. You talk about the legacy that President Donald Trump would want to leave. Very difficult to get into the head of the supreme leader. But when it comes to the legacy that he might want to leave after all this time, knowing that the chips are closing in on him as we speak, apparently in hiding somewhere in Iran right now, what do you think he would want that to be? How would he want to be remembered for the people of Iran and for the region?
Well, I think there's a big gap between what he would want to be remembered as and what he's going to be remembered as, because what we see now is that the Islamic regime is at the weakest point it has been in the last 30, 40 years. When you look at the value of their currency, it has depreciated to historic, unprecedented levels. since the Islamic Revolution in '79 and until today, lost thousands of percent of value. And I think it's now at 1.6 million real to $1. The Iranian economy is in ruins. It is a country that doesn't have enough facilities and infrastructure to support its population. It is a country that is known worldwide for supporting terrorism and belligerent Islamist activity. That will be his legacy after, hopefully, the man on the right side of the screen does what the free world hopes that he will do. And most importantly, the Iranian people have showed that that is what they expect him to do.
It was interesting in recent weeks, there's been no official clarification as to how many people were killed in the unrest in Iran. President Donald Trump, in the State of the Union speech, gave a very specific number of 32,000 people that very likely would be part of the legacy of the supreme leader, the regime killing its own people in the
butchering them in cold blood, using mercenaries, the IRGC, Basij, and other thugs. That will be his legacy. But I think, those numbers, they also match what Israeli intel, Mossad and IDF assess. It's somewhere between 32 and perhaps closer to 40, but there's also still unknowns. And there are still Iranians that are held and tortured in their terror centers. And despite all of that happening, a testament to how brave the Iranian people is, they're still out protesting. They're still staging protests in universities and across cities in Iran, knowing that the repression is so heavy, knowing that the consequences may be fatal, but they're still out there. And I think that kind of bravery deserves help.
Help was going to be on the way in January. We wait to see how it all unfolds. Jonathan, stay with us. Much more to unpack as we turn to a story with a difference. What do takeout deliveries indicate about a war strategy? Well, the Israeli Air Force has reportedly issued new guidelines restricting food deliveries to its headquarters in Tel Aviv over concerns that takeout orders could unintentionally signal upcoming military activity. Israeli media is reporting that soldiers were warned not to place large or unusual food orders from the military base, particularly after regular working hours. The concern is what's known as the Pentagon Pizza Index, a theory suggesting that spikes in pizza deliveries near defense headquarters can hint that military operations could be imminent. Certainly food for thought. Now, to the northern front, the Israeli Air Force has struck 8 military compounds belonging to Hezbollah's elite Radwan force in eastern Lebanon in response to the terror organization's repeated ceasefire violations. The IDF saying in recent hours that the sites in the Bekaa Valley were used by Hezbollah to store numerous weapons, including rockets. Still in studio, Lieutenant Colonel in the reserves, Jonathan Conricus. So there is much concern, of course, that Hezbollah, backed by Iran, might get involved in an escalation with Iran. Your take, A, on that concern, and B, on the IDF efforts in recent weeks to curb that from actually happening?
So on the first point, there is tremendous pressure inside Lebanon by all of the other factions that are not Hezbollah and not Iranian-backed to tell Hezbollah, you do not have a mandate, you do not have our support, and we will not condone if you, again, Hezbollah, drag Lebanon into a war that it doesn't want, will not benefit from, and will likely suffer from. So that, I think, has had an effect already on Hezbollah, where we've seen kind of a shift in their messaging, in their stance. It started very belligerent and with lots of bravado. It is now quieter, probably because they understand that in Lebanon, they would face tremendous backlash if they, again, brought war, destruction to the doorstep of Lebanese cities and homes, just because they are fighting for a foreign power, the Iranian regime. So that's something slightly positive, but of course, that is not something that we can really count on. On the second topic, Hezbollah has been violating the ceasefire systematically in southern Lebanon, central Lebanon, in Beirut, and in the Bekaa Valley, which is where the IDF just struck. Iran, speaking of the Islamic regime, has paid more than $1 billion in year 2025. They made the effort to spend money that they do not have to spend and they sent it to Lebanon at the behest of the Iranian population, trying to help Hezbollah rearm, mostly focusing on long-range rockets, larger caliber long-range rockets, and some of the advanced weaponry that was either fired or destroyed after October 7. Hezbollah remains a very significant military force, down, but definitely not out, and with the strong urge to rebuild itself and regain capabilities. Radwan, which is the images that we're seeing on the picture here, is so immensely important because that is the tip of the Hezbollah spear, if you would like, the tip of the Iranian spear against Israel, the best of the best in Hezbollah, with the best equipment, the best training, with the primal focus of invading into Israel, massacring Israeli civilians, and doing the things that we saw, unfortunately, on October 7. That is why they are the focus of Israeli intel. That is why Israel strikes long and far in order to diminish their capabilities, and I think Israel will continue to do so. It appears as if Hezbollah isn't getting the message that things have changed. The rules of engagement have changed. This isn't October 6 and it isn't October 7. Whenever Israel has indication and intel of Hezbollah build-up and infrastructure, wherever it is, whether it is in northeastern Lebanon or in the south, it will be struck, and I think that's how the IDF is going to continue. That
said, what is known about Hezbollah's capabilities right now?
Some of the long-range capabilities have been replenished. Most of them are hidden underground in remote locations that are still difficult for the IDF to get to. They're probably relatively well defended. Ground units, still relatively low level of capabilities, but of course, Hezbollah isn't waiting or resting. They are trying actively to rebuild their capabilities. But at this stage, we're looking mostly at long-range rockets and certain types of missiles that we understand Hezbollah still has in their possession and that they would want to use against Israel, either independently or as an Iranian order against Israel if whatever we spoke about in the first part of the show actually happens.
And as you say, various scenarios could play out. There's no need for panic, but certainly worth a reminder that people within the country should wait for Home Front Command instructions before deciding on their next steps. Jonathan Conricus, stay with us. There's much more to discuss. Right now, though, we're taking a very quick break. When we get back, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi reiterates the need to combat terrorism in Israel, in India, and around the world. And Somaliland appoints its first ever ambassador to Israel. We speak to a geopolitical expert from North Africa. Stay tuned. Back in a bit. This is The Rundown.
Secret is out. With millions of younger-looking customers across the country, Plexiderm is one of the most sought-after anti-aging products available today. Influencers love it, magazines feature it, and people just can't get enough of it. As a matter of fact, Elle Magazine gave it an Editor's Choice Award as Best Instant Wrinkle Filler for 2025. Plexiderm reduces the appearance of fine lines, wrinkles, and those dreaded under-eye bags in as little as 10 minutes. So yes, you can look years younger in minutes, and the effects will last for hours. No surgery, no gimmicks, just results.
Look at this one under-eye bag. It's gone.
I've tried it all, and then I found Plexiderm, and this happened.
The best news, in this super inflated economy, you can try Plexiderm for only $14.95 and free shipping. So don't wait. Just call the number on your screen.
Call 800-919-8734.
Tired of the hassle and high costs of selling a home? We can help. At Ideal Agent, we'll connect you with a top local agent that'll sell your home fast for top dollar, and all this for as low as a 2% commission.
We got the top dollar for our house and the lowest commission that I could have imagined. The house sold in 2 days. It was so exciting for us.
Ideal Agent is available nationwide. There's no obligation, and best of all, our service is completely free. Call today or visit idealagent.com.
Some people buy property. We identify opportunities.
David Jamie Group. Experience dedicated to those who choose to invest differently. Today, Dubai is booming. Exceptional growth, favorable taxation, unmatched security, and returns unlike anywhere else in the world. Surrounded by top-tier experts, we search on the ground and alongside you for the most promising opportunities in Dubai, but also in Miami, Tel Aviv, and Paris. Want to invest smart? Secure your future in the world's most iconic cities? David Jamie Group. Real estate opportunities.
Dance, music, and magic immerse you in the story of Jerusalem. This is Jerusalem, an unforgettable musical where the past and present meet. Welcome to the heart of the most sought-after city in the world. A unique experience only at Kikar HaMusika. Reserve now at thisisjerusalem.co.il.
Wherever you are, access our program's reports, in-depth discussions and expert analysis anytime, anywhere, right from your phone. All the content from the I24 News website, the latest articles, exclusive interviews, VOD and live broadcasts is now just a tap away on the I24 News app. So what are you waiting for? Download the I24 News app today.
Welcome back. Our coverage continues as we take a closer look at the close relationship between Jerusalem and New Delhi. Prime Minister Narendra Modi wrapping up an historic blitz visit to Israel, visiting Yad Vashem. The Indian leader meeting with President Isaac Herzog, planting an oak tree together at the president's residence in Jerusalem. Later in the day, Modi and his counterpart, Benjamin Netanyahu, held a bilateral meeting. 16 memoranda of understanding were signed, highlighting the deep cooperation between the two countries. Senior Middle East correspondent Ariel Oseran has more in this report.
Prime Minister Netanyahu pulled out a surprise during Narendra Modi's historic visit to Israel, greeting his Indian counterpart in traditional Indian clothing, a warm signal of the two leaders' special relationship. On the second day of his visit, Modi went to the Yad Vashem Holocaust Memorial in Jerusalem. As customary in visits by high-level dignitaries, Netanyahu showed Modi the names of Holocaust victims from the family of his wife Sarah, after which Modi laid a wreath in the Hall of Remembrance. The Indian premier then met with Israeli President Isaac Herzog, and the two planted an oak tree in the garden of the president's residence.
I believe that India is an essential part of the great future of the Middle East. And the Middle East is an essential part of the great future of India. I saw your record number of growth, your economic growth is something that is attracting the whole world. It's fantastic.
The relationship between India and Israel across sectors can do a lot for the global good, be it science, innovation, educational institutions. We have had very positive exchanges, especially in sectors such as water and agriculture.
Shortly after, Modi met with Netanyahu for an expanded bilateral meeting in Jerusalem's King David Hotel, where the two countries signed 16 memoranda of understandings, mainly in the fields of security and agriculture.
The future belongs to those who innovate, and Israel and India are bent on innovation. We are proud ancient civilizations, very proud of our past, but absolutely determined to seize the future and we can do it better together.
Netanyahu added that the Israeli and Indian governments will hold a joint meeting in India as soon as one can be arranged. Modi, for his part, announced that India and Israel will soon finalize a free trade agreement.
The partnership between India and Israel has brought us to the present day and made our relationship, has given it a new dimension to our relationship. I once again extend my heartfelt gratitude for the affection and respect I have received from you and the people of Israel. Your graciousness and warmth have made this visit truly memorable. Thank you. Toda Rabba.
Despite being largely challenged on the global stage, Israel can mark a successful visit by the leader of the world's largest democracy. The two countries continue seeking to deepen their strategic partnership in these rapidly changing times.
Still in studio, Lieutenant Colonel in the Reserves, Jonathan Conricus, and joining us now, Senior Correspondent Owen Alterman. And Owen, so good to have positive news to talk about. You've been covering and tracking developments over the past 2 days. Clearly a warm bond between the two prime ministers. Lots of positive rhetoric, much standing. They love hugging, talking about positive future coordination. What stood out for you?
The Indians went out of their way to make this happen, and Narendra Modi personally, Benita, and that's what stands out. It was obviously very emotional, I think, for all of us in Israel, a country with obviously the noises of war around us, still in the shadow of October 7th. And here comes Narendra Modi. We're seeing the pictures on our screen of his arrival in Israel, on giving, of course, the red carpet throughout this visit, coming out there and standing proudly and boldly with the Israeli flag over his shoulder in the Israeli Knesset and talking about friendship and partnership. And then today, Benita, putting the meat on the bones with the different agreements, potential free trade agreement for Israel with the world's fourth largest economy, but also defense cooperation. We heard about the innovation from Prime Minister Netanyahu, people-to-people ties. Again, a sprawling relationship that is everything from grand strategy, if you look at the economic corridor and the I2U2 forum with India, Israel, the United States, and the UAE, all the way down to the yoga that Narendra Modi talked about, or even the Indian restaurant where Netanyahu took his wife Sarah on their first date. So an important moment for Israel, an important diplomatic milestone too.
Jonathan, your thoughts on the messaging around the fight against terror that impacts Israel, it impacts India, and according to Narendra Modi, it impacts the entire globe. An important message right now for this region as everybody's waiting to see what's going to unfold with Iran.
Yeah, I think it's a very important one, and the Indian media, I think, covered it with great detail, reflecting on Israel's counter-terrorism prowess and Israeli experience fighting and defeating terrorism. And I think the Indians are impressed with that, and they want to deepen and broaden the security cooperation with Israel. But, you know, there are many countries around the world who want to do that. The difference is, just as Owen said very correctly, that this is above board. This is an official visit by a head of state and who is publicly pledging and hitching, in ways, his political future with that of Israel. I think credit should be given here to the Prime Minister for being able to cement and really take his personal relationship with the Prime Minister of India and use it for the better of the state of Israel. And we're seeing this diversify, not, you know, it's anchored around security. That's the really what it's based on, but it goes well beyond that. And that's, I think, is very positive. I think, you know, when we look at the bigger scheme of things, India is a rising power globally. I think they will rise in importance at the UN and other global fora. I think they will be an important counterweight to China. And I think we can see in the future, in the not so distant future, strengthened military ties between India and Israel that may help Israel become more independent and more diversified in its sources of ammunition and other things that Israel needs crucially.
And by the way, before we let Modi go, Benita, Jonathan, to mention polling, India is one of the few countries, according to a Pew study done in the last few months, where Israel is above water. 34% of Indians have a favorable opinion of Israel, 29% unfavorable. That obviously leaves plenty of people who don't yet know. But one of the few countries where Israel is above water, and it's unlike especially countries in Europe where Israel is well underwater. And again, that shows, I think, some depth and some roots to these ties. And as Jonathan correctly said, a visit that was covered extensively by the Indian media.
Certainly a crucial time for both nations. I want to bring you an update on our top story this hour. The Omani foreign minister has just posted that they have finished the day after significant progress has been made regarding the talks between the United States and Iran. Obviously, as we said earlier on in the show, that's happening in Geneva. He says, quote, "We will resume soon after consultation in the respective capitals, and those discussions will take place on a technical level in Vienna next week." So that development coming through. We started the show talking about these indirect discussions continuing, and now we have the outcome. It seems they're going to be pushed out for technical discussions in Vienna next week. That's not going to sit so well with many in the region. Owen Alterman, senior correspondent, break it down.
A few points. First of all, we hear this from the Omanis. They would say that. They're the mediators, right? We still have to hear from the United States, which has been mostly silent over the course of the day. Some leaks to Israeli media, and I believe including our sister Hebrew channel over the last couple of hours. But, Benita, and this is important, he has now committed the sides publicly to these technical talks next week, meaning if the United States comes out and starts waving its hand and says no, there could be a kind of image price for the United States to pay doing that. And also the idea of having technical talks is supposed to signal that there was this significant progress, that we don't only need the big picture negotiations that we've seen in the last few rounds of Geneva, but there is enough basis and enough of a framework of a deal to warrant having more junior level representatives talk to flesh out the details. Of course, all of this according to the mediator.
Jonathan, this feels like Iran just gets to kick that can down the road once again and buy more time.
I'm sure that the Iranians thought the same thing in June 25, that they were being able to outsmart the Trump administration and the president himself, that they were being able to use diplomacy as a great line of defense. I don't think that that is going to work for them. Eventually, they are going to run out of leeway, of runway, and reality is going to come visit. Reality is that the US isn't going to accept enrichment on Iranian soil, ballistic missiles that are longer than 300 miles in range, and no cap to Iran's support or state sponsoring of terrorism. If Iran, in the meetings that we see, hasn't made significant, unprecedented, historic concessions that will satisfy American demands, I don't think that the technical advisors will have much to discuss next week, if and all that happens.
And one note about the time. Unlike in the past, time is also playing in the United States' favor, because as every day goes by, what we've seen over the last few months, more and more American forces in the region. So you could argue that the United States may have an interest in dragging out the talks, or had an interest up until now. Time does not only play to Iran's favor in this case. Trump has been able, in that sense, to build a very different dynamic.
We discussed earlier on in the show, all options are on the table, and one wonders how much longer Donald Trump will wait for another break and resumption of the same indirect talks. Gentlemen, thank you so much.